Welcome back to the World of Commerce podcast. I'm your host, Marcel Hollerbach. I'm currently in Las Vegas for Shop Talk conference and took the chance to speak to a couple of interesting people here. One of those is Jordan Jewell. Jordan used to be an analyst at IDC and is now an analyst in residence at VTEX. He just recently published a paper on the 3 investments that drive e-commerce growth. So we spoke about that and also touched on things like NFT, the metaverse, and digital twins. So please enjoy my conversation with Jordan. Let's go.
From, let's say, late spring, early summer last year, 2022, onwards, we've been in the era of profitability. So you now have to, you can't focus entirely on growth. You have to say, like, what does this actually mean for my bottom line? The NFT authenticates against my phone. The watch doesn't work anymore. Whoever stole it won't be able to use that watch. The NFT is essentially making it work because it knows that me, Jordan Jewell, is the one wearing it. And theoretically, that could work with all sorts of different electronics. You could say with an Xbox, that's what makes it work. Kind of any device really. But like just thinking about NFTs a little bit different, a little bit outside the box that we've found ourselves in.
Jordan, thanks for being here. We are in, as they say, fabulous Las Vegas around Shop Talk conference. And we've had the chance to speak a couple of times in the past while we were still at IDC. And I think we nerded around some like trends in commerce and these kind of things. And I'm super happy to have you here on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having Marcel.
Yeah.
Marcel.
So, before we get started, this is a shopping conference, right? And I'm super curious. Is there an item you recently purchased that you really love? And why is that?
Yeah. So you're risking turning this into a discussion about running shoes, which I'm wearing a pair right now. I'm a runner. I do like 50 miles a week or so. And so I have like way too many shoes, like 20 pairs. My wife is not happy with that. But So running shoes, like the pair I'm wearing, any pair like that. And I was actually thinking about this recently, just, how shoppers get information about like why they buy a specific item or a specific pair of shoes in this case. And there's a website called Run Repeat, for instance, that like they chop a shoe in half and they show you the foam density. Nice. And they put smoke in it to show how breathable it is and stuff like that. And it just made me think about like all the different channels that shoppers are going on to do research before making a purchase, to learn about a product, to find the best deal. So for me, it's running shoes. I know I went on a bit there.
That is a retailer, right? You were talking about?
They're just an informational site, but
Okay.
They have affiliate links to like Amazon or whatever. They're retailers themselves put product information about shoes, but let's say I want to compare a pair of Nikes to like a pair of Asics.
Basically they put in the extra work to create this very useful product information on top of what they're already getting from the brand.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I mean, I'm sure this is the case with bikes or gear or, jewelry, any given industry. But for me, it's running shoes.
They should sell it back to the brand.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, the guy who does it, he's like getting all this equipment to like chop the shoes up and a durometer to check the firmness. And
awesome.
It's kind of like, it's ridiculous the levels that, I consume it now. I consume that information, but the levels that consumers go to learn about products.
But something I observed myself is that a lot of the retailers, they basically augment the information they get from the brands by quite a bit, by having like their own photographers and their warehouses, their own editorial teams. And that I think that really gives them an edge oftentimes. Yeah.
And again, getting nerdy about shoes, but like this is a specific example, like Asics, when they give you the stack height, the height of the foam on the shoe, they take out the insole. Okay. Which kind of makes sense, but like that's not how people don't run in the shoe without the insole unless you put in your own insoles. So like, the retailer does exactly what you said, and they take their own images, they usually remeasure it and all this stuff, and In a lot of cases, it does provide a lot of value beyond what the brands do.
Yeah, good stuff. So probably, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah.
And maybe also the company you work with right now.
Yep. So I'm Jordan Jewell. I'm the analyst in residence at VTEX. I was an analyst at IDC, International Data Corporation, industry analyst who looked at digital commerce and started our commerce practice there, actually. I was there for 7 years, and IDC didn't actually have a digital commerce practice prior to me starting it and doing market evaluations and market share reports and such. But about a year and 2 months ago, I came over to the dark side. I came over to a vendor, a software company, VTEX, because I thought that I think a lot of software companies, and a lot of companies in general for that matter, could really use that analyst approach. Like they could benefit from a more objective, like analytical view of creating content and talking about their product and such. But VTEX were a commerce platform originally based in Brazil, really huge in Brazil and growing internationally. So I'm part of the US team trying to bring some of that success to the US, and we went public in 2021. So grown a lot in the past few years.
Nice. So when I first saw it, that VTEX has hired you as an analyst in residence, I thought that was very smart, actually, because I remember in my own entrepreneurial career how often I basically came up with stuff that nobody understood or the market had no idea what that is. And I think sometimes it's something you can do, but it needs to find a balance, right? And I think you're with your, let's say, analytical mindset and what you've seen before, you're probably a little bit like a corrective to what some of the marketing folks are putting out there.
I hope so. I hope that I don't fall into the trap over time of drinking too much Kool-Aid. But I think too often marketing just talks about our product is awesome, it's great, you should buy it, blah, blah, blah. And less about like the problem a customer is trying to solve, just educating, like talking about what's happening in the market and why it matters. Which again, that's like what I'm trying to bring to VTEX and do with the content I'm creating.
Yeah. Hope to not put you too much on the spot here, but so what's the problem that VTEX is solving?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a commerce platform. Like the obvious problem is helping brands and retailers sell online profitably. There are a few main differentiators for VTEX. The most obvious one I would say is really strong OMS, order management system, and marketplace capabilities. One of VTEX's first big customers was Walmart in Brazil, and it was like when there weren't that many employees at the company, which is I think 23 years at this point years old.
Wow.
But Walmart has a lot of like specific needs, so they built in like very specific order management and inventory capabilities that really help the product evolve, and it's strong in that matter. So you can build like a really sophisticated marketplace where you might be a distributor, or you might be selling to different retailers as a B2B company, or onboarding a bunch of different sellers as a marketplace.
Yeah.
So that's like a really good strength, I think, in the market, but also that it's multi-tenant SaaS, microservices based. Like we're part of the MoC Alliance, and as a result, it's SaaS. Like you're not dealing with as much maintenance or hosting and that sort of stuff, of course. But also there's a platform as a service layer, so companies can kind of build their own business logic and apps on top of what we offer.
That's awesome. And I remember myself looking into commerce systems a while ago, just to map out like a potential partner ecosystem for products up back in the days. And I realized that there are not so many real multi-tenant SaaS products out there, right? So there's a lot of, we take our old on-premise stuff and we upload it for you on the cloud happening, but true multi-tenant, born in the cloud SaaS is really rare. There's probably, I don't know, BigCommerce is out there and Shopify or so. Those would be the two that pop to my mind, and VTEX, obviously.
Yeah, and I mean, you run into like frankly, you do run into challenges with it because you can't customize it as much. So like a company who wants a super custom solution, you're going to probably gravitate more towards a on-prem or single
Question
tenant.
is whether they should have it in the first place.
Yeah, well, that's the conversation we try to have, but it's not always an easy one when you have like a set of business processes that have been ingrained over 10 years and you don't want to stray from that. But so like you do run into some of those challenges, but again, I think I mean, I think this is the direction the market's moving in, and I know there's been the move for composability, and we try to talk about being composable but complete, in that you can start with what we offer, but then if you want to switch out with like a different search provider or a different PIM or a different content management system, whatever it may be, you can do so. And I think that's the direction the market's moving in general.
Yeah. You just recently published a report, and you call it the 3 investments to drive e-commerce growth. I'm super curious in that, because obviously, I mean, we're in a little bit challenging time right now. Everyone out there, be it a software vendor or retailer or brand, is looking for ways to drive more efficiency, for more profitability, and so on. So I think everybody is really looking into how to drive basically these efficiency gains. What's it about?
So, I mean, and frankly, it has an executive summary, and I think it does a good job summing it up. You don't have time to read the whole paper, but it's like I approached this as I did as an analyst. Like I wasn't trying to sell product. Yeah. I was just trying to say, like, if I was a retailer or brand and only could make 3 bets, 3 investments, what would they be? So I interviewed some of our customers, some of our partners, some analysts. My successor at IDC, I interviewed her, and one of the main things I found was one, like why this matters. When I started this paper, I started like I don't know, 9 months ago. The economic situation was a little different, so I wasn't thinking about profitability as much. But what became apparent when I was combing through Census Bureau data and just economic data in general is, so I've categorized into 3 eras we've been in. Essentially, everything up to 2020 to COVID was era of the old normal. Like essentially, it was pretty predictable. Growth and profitability were balanced. Investments were balanced. And then once kind of the initial craziness of COVID died down a little bit, so let's say the second half of 2020 through the beginning of 2022, this was the era of growth at all costs. So this is where you saw hugely rapid growth. E-commerce was the savior in e-commerce. Like one of our biggest customers, Carrefour, they're the 7th biggest retailer in the world, 1st biggest in Brazil. They for a while were just trying to manage that demand. They were seeing more orders online than in all their brick and mortar stores at some points. Like it was crazy. So they were just trying to manage that demand and so focused on growth that they weren't looking at their margins and profitability. But then, as we kind of all realize now, from let's say late spring, early summer last year, 2022 onwards, we've been in the era of profitability. So you now have to, you can't focus entirely on growth. You have to say, like, what does this actually mean for my bottom line? And balancing investments. So you're not just making moonshot investments all the time. You have to balance those investments. And what I found is the 3 bets I talk about they're pretty practical. I will even say they're kind of obvious, but I think they're under prioritized. So those 3 investments are: 1, make inventory and fulfillment your strength. I just think companies look at fulfillment as a cost of doing business and not like an absolute necessity. Focusing on existing customers over new customer acquisition. So essentially, new customer acquisition has gotten really expensive, whether it's through Facebook ads, just ads in general.
True.
And what we found is that existing customers are the ones that bring profit. So let's say the average brand or retailer spends 80% of their marketing budgets on new customer acquisition. Let's just move the needle a little bit back in the other direction so we can market better to our existing customers and increase the number of orders they have. And third, engage with customers in new ways. So essentially just trying to step outside of that typical commerce box. There's a little bit of homogeneity in commerce and how PDPs, web pages look. Like, let's just engage with our customers a little bit different. So live shopping, video in commerce in general, more immersive PDPs, chat commerce, like just some of these newer. One of our customers even got a Matterport, a camera, and put it throughout their retail space, and you can actually tour their store.
Wow!
And you could actually click on a top or like a dress or whatever and check out directly in that interface using APIs. So
nice.
Just those customers that want to learn more, like you could use the same example for shoes. If a customer wants to know more about your shoes, just put a video where your associate is talking about those shoes, explaining like when they should be used for race day or whatever. So just engage with customers in new ways. So those are the three. Again, I think they're pretty straightforward, but not prioritized enough.
Yeah, and I think they also relate to each other. Going back to your first point, the logistics, right, and the inventory management and warehouse and probably even delivery and so on. What I've seen oftentimes at retailers is the ones who figure it out, they make that part of even their, let's say, to increase retention and drive conversion, right? Because the quicker you can deliver, and the more reliable, for example, the better it will be for your customers, right? So, and that again plays into re-engaging existing customers and making them more loyal and so on.
Yep.
Have you explored during your report also, let's say, the whole topic around AI a little bit and generative AI and how that could help? Probably. Does it help even?
One of the main, one of my main thoughts or one of the main concepts of the paper is, again, we're focused on profitability. And like, I'll give you an example. So the fulfillment one, you just gave an example as well. I create a maturity model. That's what's in the paper. It's a maturity model, like a company can gauge their maturity along 5 different stages. And what we found, it's not scientific. As a former analyst, I'll say we didn't run a huge survey. It's not scientific yet. But we found is 55% or so of retailers are in those first 2 stages. So they haven't even gotten to the 3rd stage, 4th stage. I think most companies should be at least in that 3rd stage. Mm-hmm. Not every company needs to be like Amazon, but most companies will see significant reduction in cost if they're in the 3rd stage. My initial, so kind of answering your question, my initial advice would be solve that or solve your PDPs. Like make sure your top 10 selling PDPs are good, like excellent, before you focus on AI. With that said, you can use AI to bolster some of those things, like especially actually on the PDP example. I don't have a great specific customer example doing it, but I've heard of companies, filling in their product descriptions for Amazon, for Walmart, for Target, for different channels using AI. And you can find that tweaking it slightly will boost sales on those different channels. You don't need the exact same descriptions or words or whatever phrases. So like that's an example of something you can do. Something I think we'll start to see more of is actually, it's expensive to take pictures of all your products. You can actually use generative AI to create those images.
Absolutely.
You may not want a hand in them yet because then they'll look really creepy. But that's going to be a huge example of how it can bolster like a PDP. I think that's one example. There's obviously like some examples, other examples, maybe not generative AI, but for other forms of AI around like inventory and logistics and fulfillment. But those are the examples I hear the most about.
Yeah. Yeah, my impression is that a lot of retailers are playing around with it at the moment. Not a lot have yet figured it out 100% what to do with it. especially when dealing with product data, I think there's some cases where it really works nicely whenever you don't need 100% exact result. Basically, like an attribute mapping probably is not a good thing to do, because even if you just get 95% correct, right, it still means 5% of your 1 million SKUs is screwed, basically. So that doesn't work. But I'm totally with you. Like image generation, taking in a product image, changing backgrounds, moving it around, and I think probably even creating 3D models at one point will be something where AI can help a lot, because today it's really, really expensive to do it. And as we are slowly but steadily moving towards something like the metaverse, which eventually one time comes, I think 3D models are also very important to have. And I've seen another use case, I just wanted to add, is around audiences. You mentioned contextualization for different retailers, but if you go into social, for example, and you look at what Meta is doing, and Facebook Marketplace and Instagram and so on, you can even contextualize the product content to fit certain audiences, right? So we've run a couple of prompts with GPT-3 where we said, okay, take this description and rewrite it for a 5-year-old or for a Silver Surfer, or my favorite was like Snoop Dogg it, basically. So for Shizzle, my Nizzle, talking about sneakers again, right? So that did a good job. And I think that can add a lot of scale, basically, especially when you're thinking about different audiences on different channels and so on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So when you came in, we briefly talked about metaverse and NFTs. And I'm curious where your mind is on NFTs. Can it be like a loyalty tool for retailers? Should retailers at all do it at the moment, or are there different priorities they should focus on first?
Yeah, so it's the latter, in my opinion. So I mean, my main thought, and what we talked about before we started recording, was just that there are a lot of low-hanging fruit that I think aren't addressed or should be addressed before a lot of these things are experiment. I mean, you can experiment, but just, again, we're in the era of profitability. Are those going to be profitable projects is kind of the question. And I think for most brands and retailers right now, they're not going to be. So again, focus on your existing customers, your inventory and fulfillment, your content and your engagement models, essentially. Okay, let's say you've done that. Okay, so there are maybe some examples that make more sense. One of my main thoughts is with NFTs. I think I actually got this idea from talking to, I was at IDC, my former company, analyst firm. They're NFT analyst. Can't remember his name, unfortunately, but I was at their conference last year, and I was speaking with him to get his thoughts. And one of the things we talked about was that NFTs are much more than I think how people are talking about them right now. People are talking about them as, like, you know, the way everyone makes fun of them is like selling art, like
it's a JPEG,
GIF,
basically.
like JPEG online, and there's a lot of use cases that if you just change the way you're thinking, like it's more than just loyalty, like giving your customers a JPEG so they feel like they're part of an exclusive club, which there's some value in that. But I actually think they can completely, many years down the road, potentially change how customers engage with certain products. So a couple examples. One, I'm not an expert in handbags, but Chanel has, from what I know, it's a luxury good. You get a card that authenticates it. It says this is an authentic handbag. You're the rightful owner, etc. And why not make that an NFT? You can have an NFT that shows that it's non-fungible. Like, this is a authentic product. You're the rightful owner, and that can, and they're actually, from what I've heard, experimenting with like different, maybe not an NFT yet, but they're experimenting with different technologies to do that. Essentially take that physical card and put it in the digital world. NFTs that's actually a really good use case. It's not the way we think about them, but it's that's a perfect use case in my mind. A second example is like an electronic. I'm going to actually use my watch as an example, but let's say a luxury watch again. You could actually have an NFT. Again, it authenticates it. It shows that it's like that's the real deal. That's the real product. And that it's, you can't mix them up essentially. I'm butchering the terms, but essentially, let's say someone stole my watch. The NFT authenticates against my phone. The watch doesn't work anymore. Yep. Whoever stole it won't be able to use that watch. The NFT is essentially making it work because it knows that me, Jordan Jewell, is the one wearing it. So, and theoretically, that could work with all sorts of different electronics. You could say with an Xbox, that's what makes it work. Kind of any device really, but like just thinking about NFTs a little bit different, a little bit outside the box that we've found ourselves in with like art and I think some of those
and apes and monkeys.
Which again, there's some value in that, but I think like for the average retailer, I think there's more creative ways to get value from NFTs.
Yeah, for retailers and I think also for brands in the end. And what last year I would have thought that Meta and Instagram would play a bigger role in the adoption of that. But just like I think 3-4 weeks ago, they announced that they're gonna sunset their NFT support on Instagram, probably because of their profitability efforts. Maybe it's coming back. But my assumption would have been like a year ago that the NFT is a really cool tool to basically show authenticity and true ownership of a physical product in a digital world.
Yeah.
And that is new, right? Because there's tons of Instagram profiles where they have something like watch busters and something like this, right? Where there's people trying to figure out which influencers are wearing fake watches and fake products and so on. And apparently that's really a thing. And I think if you combine like a digital twin of a physical luxury item with the capability to connect it to your socials, and you can say, look, this is legit, this is real. It adds real utility. And then on top, we see that with, I think Artifact did it with Nike together, right? They released that hoodie. When you hold your camera towards it, it reads the QR code on the hoodie, and then you get wings and stuff like this. And I could imagine that probably maybe TikTok is gonna do it, right? Now that Instagram is off it, but maybe with TikTok you record a video and TikTok realizes, right, you're wearing a product that has an NFT connected, and then within the TikTok recording, it adds some utility and some fancy flashy stuff that just you get because you own that product. And I think that combination of social media, NFT and items is a very interesting combination.
Yeah, no, that's maybe you should make a business out of that. But I mean, I think a lot of the social channels, the social networks have dropped the ball on commerce. So Facebook, Google could have been, Google's a search bar for everything.
Yes.
Other than commerce, where Amazon's a search bar, at least here in the US. And they've made it better, but they've dropped the ball. Facebook just couldn't make it work. They were too focused on ads this whole time. Every time they kind of did stuff with commerce on Instagram, they were just half-assing it. Like they just weren't focused on it correctly. I don't use TikTok. I've had enough social media, frankly. But from what I understand, they've made the best attempt thus far in terms of commerce. So I would not be. I know there's a lot of now privacy concerns and government oversight about TikTok, but in terms of what they're actually bringing to users, to consumers, I think they have the chance to make the best attempt, because you need the people using it, you need engagement, which they have, and then you kind of have to understand how people buy or want to buy. People didn't want to buy on Instagram the way they set it up.
Yep.
So to make it work on TikTok I think it could work. The way they've set up carts and having a cart where you can add products from a bunch of different influencers is Instagram didn't do that. And the NFT examples is a great one.
Yeah, I think TikTok has the chance to iterate basically on the mistakes of the
Yep.
others before. I think with Google, it was shopping actions. That was their marketplace initiative that never really flew. And then we saw it with checkout on Instagram. And I'm saying iterating because fun fact is a lot of the TikTok partner managers we today speak to are actually former Meta employees, right? So they kind of hired the brains there, and probably they know what they fucked up before and are doing it better now.
And when I was at IDC, Facebook was my client for a little while, and I just kept telling them I was like, you really should get into commerce. Like, these are a few things you need to really get into. And unfortunately, they were just so. It happens a lot with big companies, but they're so focused on the business that drives 90-something% of the revenue, which was ads, that they couldn't look beyond that into some of the other opportunities. So definitely agree.
There's another, I think, structural problem, and I'm curious to see whether TikTok can overcome it. Is that a lot of the brands and retailers that I spoke to, especially the larger ones, actually didn't want to sell through Instagram, for example, or shopping actions, because essentially you're trading conversion rate for data, right? So you get a little bit more conversion probably because obviously Meta is throwing all their brains they have on maximizing that click and that checkout, but in return you don't get the chance to, let's say, profile the customer, the consumer on your own properties and so on. And I think that is an ongoing conflict that is still going on and that also TikTok will have to battle. But my feeling is that also that is one of the reasons why that hasn't really taken off yet. Yeah,
and I'm drawing kind of a parallel here, but like when you think about a brand or retailer making the decision or not to sell on Amazon, for instance, it's similar. You're making a like volume versus customer data decision about whether, because with Amazon, they're not going to give you the level of data that you want. You don't own the customer, but there's so much traffic on Amazon. And what we've seen with Amazon is their advertising business is now their most profitable business. And it's kind of crazy, but that's cut into the margin because you kind of are required to buy ads oftentimes to effectively sell in your category on Amazon. Could easily see TikTok going down the same route. It's a very profitable business, high margins. So that's also part of the discussion. You're seeing kind of, it's just customer acquisition has gone up over time. What I kind of started with.
Yeah. It's like what you said in your report, right? Focus on the existing customers you have, maximize that. Yeah, it's so funny how everything is becoming everything today, right? Amazon is a cloud provider, is a marketplace, is an advertising company, is probably becoming a search company, is a had attempt with hardware, and you see the same thing happening at the other vendors and companies as well. So everything is, I don't know, kind of merging.
And if you, I mean, they've clearly, I think, if you like look at their organizational changes, they were spreading out a little too far. Like in grocery, they pulled back greatly. And in some of their other brick and mortar areas, they've kind of gravitated back towards online, which makes sense. That's what their strong suit. But I mean, they've gone in all sorts of different areas.
True. So we're coming to the end of the 30 minutes. Jordan, as always, very, very cool talking to you. Very nice insights. And enjoy the rest of Shop Talk of the day. Good success with the VTEX. And hope to have you on the podcast soon again.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
This has been fun. Thanks.